There's always a great temptation to auction off spectrum when you're looking for revenues, because that's a great source of income. It's billions of dollars, and there is a swath of federally controlled spectrum that they're looking at. It's very likely that the Supercommittee would come out with a recommendation that they auction various amounts of federally controlled spectrum. That means spectrum that's actually run by the federal government for federal uses, but not necessarily used all the time for that, and that they would then have that go to deficit reduction. Spectrum is used obviously for broadcasting, for our wireless telephones, for garage door openers, for your phones, your wireless phones, everything. And so there's a great basically deficit in terms of the amount of spectrum out there for the uses that we have for them. It's always a trade-off of, do you use spectrum or do you use other investments to substitute for spectrum, such as fiber. What this all means is that this is more spectrum that could be used for our daily uses, such as more capacity for our iPhones, which sometimes are delayed because of a lack of spectrum or overcrowding of the spectrum. So generally, we think that auctioning is actually a good way to allocate spectrum. One of the problems, though, is that if we assume that it's going to be auctioned off, that means it's going to be auctioned off with basically property rights in those who get it. And so one of the alternatives is, do you have it be licensed or unlicensed property? So one area of unlicensed spectrum is Wi-Fi. So we all go to places, oh, free Wi-Fi, or even some services that give you Wi-Fi at a charge. But that is an industry that has grown up through wireless spectrum. It's like a commons, if you want to think of it in that way. And if we have more spectrum allocated to the wireless, to the unlicensed approach, then there might be more innovation, there might be more use of Wi-Fi. What I'm saying is that it's all a trade-off of licensed versus unlicensed, federal versus commercial, and there's other trade-offs in investment, in fiber or in receivers or some other capital investment versus the use of spectrum.